Right.
Chat on there. Okay. Wait, what the heck? What did I just do here?
I I'm not sure.
There we go.
Good. All right, welcome everyone. All right, we have 19, 20 people already coming into the meeting. It's fantastic. So glad to see you after Passover. I hope you all had a wonderful Passover. Sure, the rabbi wishes you the same. Um, yeah, ni hao, ni hao. Wow, I hope are you all the way over there? My goodness. Um, so tonight we're doing tonight is a double parsha, I think.
Tazria and
Tzaria
Metzora.
Metzora. Yeah. And it starts at Leviticus 12:1, just so we know. So oh hello. We'll start by having the rabbi give us blessings in a moment. Just before we do that, go ahead and put in your dedications if you want to dedicate this to your Torah learning to someone or something. Um, Go ahead. I always enjoy that, and I see Michelle Michelle Mueller has dedicated the study to her father, Michael, which is very nice, and I hope that he does well with his radiation therapy. And Mark is to his mother and brother-in-law. Yeah, there's a lot of people out there, so praying for reviewing Torah is good. It's good for them. So. Oh my goodness, your wife is ill. I hope Nancy. I wish her a
Shlema.
refuah shlema. Exactly what Rabbi said, right? And Pat, who's having a hip replacement, and thank you, Faith. That's very nice of you. So, Rabbi, why don't you go ahead and lead us with the
Sure.
bracha and the
Okay.
blessing? And I know that you have a lot to say tonight, so I'm
Yeah,
gonna
it's
kick
it
back.
really, really resonates with speech magic. Temple of Miriam. So this is what this
Great.
whole parsha resonates or connects with. So Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech asher bachar b'mikol hamim v'natan לנו toto. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. Amen. I mean, this is an interesting parsha. Can I go ahead and read the first paragraph, or do you
You
want to
can go
go?
ahead and just whenever you want me to swing in, let me know. Go
All right,
ahead.
I'm just going to read the first paragraph because it's a pretty heavy hitter. Hashem spoke to Moses. Okay, so God speaking directly to Moses, saying, and then he says, "Go speak to the other boys and girls. Go speak to the children of Israel, saying, when a woman conceives and gives birth to a male, she shall be contaminated for a 7-day period, as during the days of her separation. Infirmly shall she be contaminated. On the 8th day, the flesh of the baby's foreskin shall be circumcised, and 33 days she shall remain in blood of purity. She shall not touch anything sacred. She may not enter the sanctuary until the completion of her days of purity. And if she gives birth to a female, this is different. She shall be contaminated for 2 weeks, as during her separation. And for 66 days she shall remain in blood of purity. So I'm gonna ask Rabbi, can you comment on that? Start us maybe from there, and
Well, the laws here is is basically what's tahar v'tuma, pure and impure, and the laws of tahara mishpacha are the laws of family purity. So it's just basically detailing what the laws are, like when a woman gives birth, also when a woman is in her menstrual cycle, or for men, shivcha zera, if a man spills his seed, like nocturnal emission. They also the to go to the mikveh.
have to purify,
You have
right?
to purify. Immersing in a mikveh, right, is a And when we had the Beit HaMikdash, they also had to bring a korban to the Beit HaMikdash.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so this idea of well, can you speak to the fact that why is it different for a different number of days of contamination for if you have a boy versus a girl? It's like twice as long
Right, that I
for a
would have to say. I
girl.
mean, basically, for men, the Brit Milah, the circumcision is, of course, on the eighth day that the moel,
Yeah.
the person who's trained to do a circumcision, performs the Brit Milah. Why
Yeah.
the difference in time? I'd actually have to investigate that. I'm sure that there are a number of different reasons, but I didn't investigate that specific thing. So
Yeah.
I could
I,
investigate it and bring it to the
okay.
next year. It's an interesting question.
Well, I thought I would start with a problem because the title of the Parsha, which we
It's
neglected
Tazria,
to.
right? Which is conceives.
Yeah, right. Conceive. Well, I think that's very funny. It means conceive, right? But isn't it also the root of, am I wrong? Is it not only the root of like tsuris or contamination or tsara? Is
Yeah,
it,
it's related. The terms are related. Could be
and
because when a woman conceives, she becomes impure.
okay. And so Surus, for those of you don't know who out there who don't speak Yiddish, means like aggravation, the things that are going in your life. So children certainly are that. They create a lot of Surus in your life. Are girls considered less pure than boys? Well,
No,
no, they're not. Not at
men,
all.
women aren't considered impure than men. I mean, men, like I said, I mean, the whole idea that gets glossed over, but nocturnal emission can render a man impure. So it's not that women are inherently, innately, or intrinsically impure. These are just laws governing. Plus, the fact we have to understand when we say the word tuma or tame, this is a spiritual impurity. It does not designate that the person is somehow blemished or
Yeah.
that there's anything
Well, I think the
intrinsically
person wants to
wrong with the
clarify
person. It just
they want
means
to
that, yeah, it's
clarify
a
their
spiritual
question, which
impurity
is
that has to be removed. A person can become tame by coming into contact with a corpse. They call it tame met.
that's right.
And wow, I mean, I didn't do anything wrong. For example, if a person comes in contact with a corpse, they become tame met. And today
Mm.
we're all tame met because the only way to get rid of that type of tumor was through the para aduma, which was the red heifer, which we
Which we don't
uh,
have, right?
yeah,
The
right. Well,
way
there's
to
dispute. Some people say we have it back, but in any case, we don't have the Beit HaMikdash, so it doesn't do us any
yeah.
good.
So, but the person Mary who asked their question wants to refine it, which means she asks, are baby girls considered less pure than boys? And I
No,
would no. The answer is no, no,
no. I mean, no. I
no.
mean,
It's
there's
not.
no
There's no
concept
different.
of that.
Yeah.
It's not that. It's that, and that's an interesting point because it should be really emphasized in Judaism. There is no concept that men are somehow more spiritually pure than women. Actually,
Yeah.
women are accorded a greater status in Judaism in terms of bina. They have a greater level of havana, of understanding, and they're considered more spiritually attuned than men are. That's why men wear tefillin, the phylacteries, that the boxes that we put on our head and arm. Women don't have to wear those. Women have actually considered more spiritually attuned than men. They have a higher level of bina, of understanding than men have. So women are in no way accorded a secondary status in traditional Judaism. Unfortunately, many people who look at it through a strictly patriarchal lens, miss that vitally important fact.
Yeah. I would agree with you. I would absolutely agree with you. All right. So, I mean, I do love this section because it's like if they can't afford a sheep, then they should take two turtle doves and they should, have a burnt offering and a sin offering. And if you read this, it's it is a craft if you ask me. So there's some interesting ritual going on. So tell us, Rabbi, I know that you had some
Well, yeah, what
interesting
I
points
wanted
that
to
you wanted to
focus
bring up.
on is actually aside from the law's tomb of the Tahara, one of the most commonly, and it was misinterpreted really when they interpreted Torah into English, the word Metzora, which is traditionally translated as leprosy, and it's not leprosy, because
Right.
tsaras, which is it's a spiritual affliction that occurs because a person spoke lashon hara, slander, or they spoke ill of another person. Slander, calumny, I think is the word. And it's a spiritual affliction. And interestingly enough, it's a supranatural. Notice I didn't say supernatural. I said supra, supra, supranatural, because nothing really is supernatural. Everything is what appears as supernatural is just a natural part of Hashem's creation that we don't understand, and okay, fine, it's supernatural, but everything is part of Hashem's creation. Anyway, back to the point. Tsaras it affects first a person's house. Obviously, a
Yep.
house can't get leprosy, right? Then it affects a person's clothing. It appears on your garments, and then it affects the body, the guf. So first, it affects the person's house, their bayit. Then it affects their begadim, their clothing, and then it affects the guf, the body. So it's a progressive type of thing. And the word metzora actually relates to the words motzi shem ra, which is a form of slander. Actually, there's all different categories. I don't want to make this confusing. Anybody text me a question if I want to make this clear, but there are different categories that come under what they call shmirat halashon, guarding your tongue, or the laws concerning speech in Judaism. The power of life and death, we say, reside in the tongue. It's from Mishlei, from Proverbs. So like Lashon Hara is simply I say, oh boy, I heard that this guy is like I see him out with another woman. Okay, that's not his wife. He's married. I see him out with another woman, and I actually see it. And then I go around spreading it. Now I don't know who the woman is or anything, but I go around spreading it. Boy, I saw Yankel out with this real hottie, and he's a married man. What the heck is he doing? And that's Lashon Hara. I'm just giving you an example. Motzi Shemra is a whole different level. Motzi Shemra is that if I didn't see Yankel out with another woman, but I don't like Yankel, all right? I don't know. Maybe he cheated me. Maybe he's not a nice guy. And I go around saying, ha ha ha, I saw Yankel out with this real hot looking babe. And,
That's worse.
and
That's
it's fabricated. It's not true. That's Motzi Shemra. So
yeah.
it's even a more severe violation than simple lashon hara. It's lashon hara that's not true. Okay, it's slander that's not true. And then you have chanifas, rechilas. I won't get into it because if I go into all the different categories of shmiras halashon, we'll be here all night without
I
getting
don't
to
know
the
if you
point
can
that I
do
want
it
to get
if
to.
you can do it concisely. We should do a
Well,
few because I
Hanifas
think
is
it
like
is.
flattery. Rechilas is another type of lashon hara. But like I said, each one
Whoa, flattery. I like that. Wait.
Hanifas, yeah, like flattering someone where you're flattering them to ingratiate yourself or get something out of them or something like that. That's
Oh, so
also
that's an interesting. I've never. I mean that. Thank you for bringing that up. That's the
right,
type of
right.
stuff that's a gem. You
So
know.
what I wanted to point out, and I'm just going to read this. Excuse me if I do it in Hebrew. I'm going to translate it. Not trying to show off. I'm not trying to show. I'm just doing it in Hebrew because it's easy for me to read it in Hebrew and translate. Besides, it's written in Hebrew. So this is Shimon ben. Okay, Shimon ben Omer. So this is Shimon. Shimon ben Omer, the son of Shimon said, okay, Kol Yemei Gadalti ben Chachamim. Kol Yemei Gadalti ben Chachamim. Let me translate as I go. Kol Yemei, all the days, ben Chachamim, amongst the sages, amongst the scholars, all the days, in other words, I spent amongst the sages. Kol Yumei Gadalti, all the days that I grew up. Gadalti is to become large, Gadol. All the days I grew up amongst the sages. V'lo matzasi leguf tov ella shtika. And I didn't find anything as good for the body as silence, relating to guarding
Mm,
your tongue, right? Shmiras halashon. That's what this parsha is about. Metzora, lashon hara, what it can bring, this supernatural affliction, it's not leprosy. It's some supernatural affliction that
yeah.
affects a person's clothing. I guess it's a blemish or something like that. It would look like leprosy, so they
I,
compare it to
I
leprosy.
I love the fact that the words all go together. A- that
Motzi, Shemra, Metzora, yeah, they're all
yeah,
related.
yeah, exactly. That impurity goes together with aggravation. That because that's what the speaking creates aggravation. The aggravation creates impurity, and it's a very um sophisticated way of that root word. That etymology has a very sophisticated root that's split into so many different directions. That's
Exactly.
great.
Yeah.
Great.
And then so this it's in Pirkei, but it continues. V'lo hamidrash hu ikr. Okay. So it says that it's not study v'lo hamidrash. It's not study hu ikr. That's the primary thing. Ella hama'aseh. But the action. In other words, the doing is the primary thing. The practice. All right. That's the primary thing. And then it says, "V'chol hamidrash devarim." Okay, v'chol hamarbe devarim. Anyone who marbe devarim is anyone who increases their speak, who talks too much, basically, loquacious, right? Mevechet. They can come to sin. All right,
Oh,
it
so
brings them to sin.
so talking too much is dangerous.
Right. So we have this concept of shemirat ha'alashin. It says. Yafer shtika lachachamim. If silence is beautiful for the wise person, kol sheken latipshim. Even more so for the fool. The fool who remains silent could be thought to be a wise person, right? They're not saying anything. They're sitting there. Sometimes
Yeah.
you don't say anything, and people think you're wise.
Mm.
Like I said, but it's better to remain silent and be thoughtful than open your mouth and remove all doubt. Sometimes.
Absolutely. So Mark Gilmore asks where in you're reading Pirkei Avot, where
Yes.
is it? Where he wants to know where it is.
It is chapter 1, Mishnah 17.
There you go. Okay, now Lolan asks a question, where is the definition of gossip in the Talmud? Well, I think I'm not sure where it is, but I would assume it is in there's a tractate of this name. So I would assume it's in there in the discussion.
Yeah, that's correct. So I wanted to mention the situation about the power of life and death resides in the tongue. So we talk about divine magic a lot at Temple of Miriam. Actually, the power of life and death resides in the tongue. There's a very interesting story that's brought down, and it's a midrash actually. And I think maybe I'd given this one before, but it's interesting. It bears repeating that there was a story about one time a king who was gravely ill. He was dying, and the only cure that existed was if someone would bring him a lion's milk.
Mm,
Okay, the milk of a lion, and he asked for 10 goats. That's all he asked for. Give me 10 goats, and I can bring you back a lion's milk. So he goes and he finds a lioness, right? He finds a lioness. And each day he throws the lioness a goat until he gained the lioness's trust. Hey, this is a nice guy. He's giving me all these goats, right? Each day he'd give him another goat, and the lioness, he'd approach a little bit closer. He gained the trust of the lioness that way. Of course, he lost the trust of the goats, but that's another story.
It's okay. They were French Canadian.
Oh, then in which case he had a heter, he had a permission, he had
I
rabbinical dispensation. But okay. So on the 10th day, he approaches the lioness and she allows him to milk her. So he's going back to the king with the milk, and he has a dream. And in this dream, all the different parts of the body have a dispute. Who's most important? Who's head honcho? Who's top dog? The hands and feet said, hey, you know what? The hands and feet said, without our physical actions, you couldn't have accomplished this task. The feet said we had to carry you there, and the hands said we were the ones that had to milk the lioness and perform the actions. You couldn't have done this without us. The heart says that, and at that time, the heart was considered the seat of intellect. The heart said we conceived the idea, right? We had the passion. The entire project was up to us. Finally, the tongue speaks up and says, hey, you know what? If it didn't speak up, all these physical efforts would have been for nothing. The tongue said, was the one that had to speak up and tell the king, hey, you know what? I can bring you the milk of a lioness. And, you know. So all the other limbs made fun of the tongue. What do you're a small boneless organ hidden in a dark place, in prison behind bony teeth. You don't see, you don't even see the light. You're nothing. You're just a helpless, boneless piece of tissue, right? There's what they tell the tongue. And the tongue responded saying, you know what? You think that? You think so, huh? Well, on this very day, you'll agree that I'm all your master. You're all going to come to me and admit that I am top dog. Mm-hmm. So what happened was when he gets back to the king, the tongue said, I'm going to prove my point here. The king says, hey, have you brought me the required refuah, the cure for my affliction? Indeed I have, sir, sire. Yes, I have, king. I brought you a bitch's milk. And the king, wait, back up a second. You brought me a bitch's milk? Go hang this piece of garbage. I mean, he brought me a bitch's milk. What, he's mocking me? I'm dying and he's mocking me? So they take him out. They're going to execute him, right? And then he has another dream. All the limbs are quaking in fear. They're scared, witless, okay? They're scared witless, out of their wits. We're going to die. We're going to die because the tongue screwed us over here. And the tongue says, well, you know what? If you agree that I'm your master, as I said, I can get you out of this mess. So what happened was they all got to, he tells the jailer, I need to speak to the king again. It's vitally important that I speak to the king again because it's going to save his life. So the king agrees, okay, bring him back in. And he says, sire, a lioness is, and in the language in the language that they used, a lioness can also be referred to as a bitch. It doesn't only refer to a female dog. Because the king hears the word and thinks, oh, he's bringing me the milk of a
He
female
thinks one
dog?
thing when it was
He's
really,
mocking me? But a bitch, they said, could also refer to a lioness, okay? It could also refer to a female lioness. It's used for a dog as well as a lioness. So he said the word therefore a bitch's milk does not necessarily refer to the milk of a dog. It refers to the milk of a lioness. And I misspoke. I should have specified that it's a lioness's milk. But if you drink this milk, you'll see that it's a lioness's milk. It's the milk of a lioness, and you'll be cured. So the king did it, and of course, he was cured. And this illustrates with the Chazal, the sages, frequently quote Mishlei, Proverbs 18:21, that death and life are in the hands of the tongue. Death and life resides in the tongue, the power of speech, right? And negative speech, lashon hara, is lashon hara, right? Is described as a weapon that can kill from a distance, affecting the speaker, the listener, and the victim. It's interesting. Elsewhere in Pirkei Avos, it's called Hamavim Panei Chaver Barabim Ein Lo Chelak L'Olam Haba. Anyone who embarrasses a person, and the word used is interesting. Kol Hamalbim actually means to cause to turn white. Lavana, Lavan is white, like we make Kiddush Lavana, blessing on the moon, right? The moon is white. So you cause a person's face to turn white. So what does this mean? It's actually considered like lashon hara, slander, is considered like the three big sins in Judaism: avodah zarah, idolatry; shvichas damim, murder, right, killing someone;
Right.
and gili arayat, which are immorality. It's considered like all three wrapped up into one. It was sinat chinam, senseless hatred, engendered by lashon hara, by evil speech, that was responsible for the Chorban Beit Sheni, the destruction of the
Exactly.
Second Temple. Okay, the
Right. It
destruction of
was,
the Second Temple. So
yeah.
the idea is that this just shows the incredible power of speech. It's a lethal weapon. Now, getting back to the point, hamalbim panei chaver barabim, a person's face turns white. What do? You embarrass someone, their face turns red, right? Their face turns red, and then the blood drains from it. So it's literally like they considered it
Yep.
like shedding blood, because you embarrass someone, their face turns red, and then the blood drains from it. They turn white, and that's considered like you're shedding blood. Uh, it's interesting. Hashem, the Hakadosh Baruch Hu, the Almighty, the Abishter, gave human beings two gates, like sha'arei or gates. All right, two gates: the teeth and the lips, to guard the tongue, signifying that one should think twice before speaking, because the tongue is in case we have the teeth. That's safeguard number one, and the lips safeguard number two, right? It's kind of interesting that we should think carefully before we speak. Now, the point is, we've been
I,
focusing on lashon hara, negative speech, but there's positive speech also. Words
I,
of encouragement, words of compassion, words of kindness. When you're learning, you know, you're learning Torah, you're learning
a finely placed word can really help someone. It can really
exactly.
turn the tide.
You give a
Absolutely.
word of encouragement. You give
A
a
word
word
of
of kindness.
encouragement.
You
So
give a word of,
you're
that's
reminding me
it.
of a story which is very funny to me. One of the things that you said about speech, one of the laws of your bad speeches, one of the categories of lashon hara, you said it's just talking too much, right?
Right.
Just prattling on,
Exactly.
on. And I, as a little boy, I'm still friends with this person. I remember her being chastised. We were in grade school together, and we must have been in like third or fourth grade. And the rabbi came up to her and said, you know, and I'm not going to use her name. He's, but I just want you to know that God gives you a limited amount of words. And when you've used up those words, you're done. And it was a pretty good technique to get her to stop being so chatty in class.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure for myself and my fellow Irish Jews, God must give us like a bonus or extra words, because we all talk here. So he gives us. I'm sure he allocates us like lanyap or something. I'm sure of it. Anyway, there's a spiritual bridge. The tongue, lashon, all right, lashon. The tongue is the only organ that's both internal and external. It's inside our mouth. It's also external, right? When we're speaking, it pops out on occasion. And what they say this what this says it's serving to take the spiritual essence of the spiritual essence of the neshama, and express it in the physical realm. Onkelos, who translated the Torah to Aramaic, he was the son of a Roman emperor who became a Jew. He converted, and he we learn Onkelos when I was a kid learning in Cheder. We learn Onkelos before we learn Rashi. And he was the son of a Roman emperor who became a Jew. And we learn his translation, the Pshat, the literal translation of Chumash. When we're learning Chumash, we learn Onkelos before we even learn Rashi. So Onkelos said that it translated that the speech, that when Hashem breathed the breath, the ruach, the breath into Adam, right? That he translates this, that Adam, what it was the power of speech that makes us human. Our
Mm.
ability to express. That's what makes us human. The power of speech. That's really what it is. And speech is the one thing that enables us to express our spiritual essence and manifest it in the physical world. And that can be for good or evil. It can be for good or evil. The point is, here's something. When I was in Israel, and this goes back, I'm 70 now. This goes back to when I was 19, 20. When I was in Israel, my first year of rabbinical school was in Israel. And I was doing I was giving a shiur on Pirkei Avot. Basically, just teaching basic Hebrew and davening, the siddur. Okay, fine. This is how we say the Birkas HaShachar, and this is how we say, the Shema, the Shemona Esrei, the Leino, the various prayers in Jewish. And I was teaching briefly at a yeshiva in Israel, where, and then I went back to my main yeshiva, but I was teaching briefly a course on the Siddur, the Jewish prayer book. And the Rosh Yeshiva did something, the head of that yeshiva did something that was really interesting. He was dealing with Balei Tshuva, people who came from non-religious backgrounds that were exploring Judaism, okay? And he did something very, very interesting. One day, and I didn't participate in this incidentally, I couldn't. I mean, I'm Irish, how could I? But he instated what he called a speech fast. One
Mm.
day go by without speaking, just
Mm.
not talking at all.
Yeah. Right.
Okay.
Sure. Yeah. A vow
And
of silence for a day, a 1 day vow of
yeah,
silence.
Reb Noach Weinberg, a very learned rabbi who was very devoted to bringing people to be makarev, to bring people close to God. He instated that. And he said, at that time I didn't have smicha, so he said, Reb McLashley. He said, Reb McLashley, you're not really in our yeshiva. So he said, you're not obligated to participate. I said, hey, look, I'm Irish. I couldn't participate if I wanted to. We talk too much, You're asking me to speech fast? I mean, come on. You got to give me a break here. But it was a speech fast where you couldn't speak at all. And many, many, many years later, after my time in Chavetz Chaim and Chaye David, and after I was out of yeshiva, after I moved to Los Angeles, okay, I was in my mid-30s, maybe approaching 40. I tried it for one day. Believe me, nobody knows how difficult that is.
It's
Of course,
hard.
you can't do it at work, and you can't do it, even at home. I mean, well, when I wasn't married, I mean, now I'm married. I mean, my wife's talking to me. I don't give her an answer. I'm going to get a clop on the head. I'm going to, hey, dumb Irishman, listen to what I'm saying. So you can't do it. But the thing is, if you have a time that you're in seclusion, try it for just 3 hours or 4 hours or 1 hour. Just try it. To be alone with your thoughts, fully awake, conscious, but not say a single word. It's really interesting because it
I'm in
brings
big
you in
trouble. I
touch
couldn't
with
do it.
yourself. Where you're alone with your thoughts and you're not speaking, you're not expressing, you're not anything. You're just alone with your thoughts. And it's really just a very interesting experience.
Wow.
And
Mark Gilmore says that Bobby Hari Das took a vow of silence in 1952 and kept it until his death in 2018. Wow.
mm,
Wow.
that does
And
deserve a
Faith
while.
Faith asks, would a speech fast include writing today? Maybe writing your thoughts down. I think
They
that
they did that, that's what they
classically,
did in the yeshiva in Eish Torah. That's what
yeah,
the students were doing to communicate. They were all walking around with pads and writing
yeah.
things down. I
Yeah.
remember that. One
But
had
I
a
think that's
slate,
kind of
one had a
cheating the I
pad.
think that's kind of cheating the
Right,
spirit of the
right.
thing. It's to
But
not
they
be
did. I mean, I remember though that they did walk around with pads because they had to like communicate basic ideas, but they had to write it down on a pad or a slate. Of course, back then we didn't have iPads or phones that we could. Those things were still science
Hmm.
fiction stuff you saw in Star Trek, but we didn't have any of that back then. So they used like pads or slates
slate,
to
yeah.
basically just scratch out simple things like no, I don't, no, 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 I don't want a second helping of whatever of macaroni and cheese, whatever.
Just, yeah.
Um, but yeah, it was a medieval monks, Lolan points out, who took a vow of silence, used to walk around wearing chalkboards. Hey, there you
Yep.
have it, Lolan. It was the same they didn't wear it around their necks, but they used
Yeah.
these little slates or little notepads to scratch out things, which I personally just thought was kind of silly. But then when I tried it over a decade and a half later, I saw the merit or I said, wow, it's an interesting experience.
I think
I
most
was able to refrain from speaking for a good 3 minutes.
I think most uh stressors, right? Um whether it be not speaking or whether it be fasting or whether it be even running a marathon or are generally used or have been incorporated in various traditions to induce, a state of a higher state, a shamanistic state, a state where it's a mood changer, it's a self changer, I think,
I was just
and I
reading comments on the side here of the chat.
yeah.
So there's Underbeg. Honest question: what does someone with a memory-related disability writing things down for that purpose mean? Not to communicate,
Ooh.
but make sure something like brain injuries, for example, don't creep up on you. That's an interesting application. Good idea. 3 minutes. Thank you, Gene.
Well,
No, the spirit of the rule matters, but I'm still curious. Your 3 minutes counted. Like I said, I mean, I would invite everyone. I'm not saying that it's not going to produce any great spiritual revelation or anything. Don't get me wrong. It's just interesting to um, see what it's like instead of speaking to just be alone with yourself and your thoughts. You're forced to go inward. And instead of always expressing what you're thinking or saying what you're thinking, or sometimes we put our mouth in motion before we put our brain in gear, really a great way to find out what's going on inside of ourselves.
I think, by the way, and I just put this in the chat in response to that honest question about it, about someone with a memory related disability. I believe that actually is the premise of the movie Memento, uh, where there's a person and he tattoos things on him that he needs to know, and every day he's got to figure it out. He's left himself notes. Yeah.
Lolan says right now it's like what we're doing right now, writing text instead of speaking verbally. Yeah.
Verbally, that's true.
That's an interesting and Lolan, really when you're writing things out, it's actually you can be more precise and specific and express yourself better sometimes by writing things out than you can when you're speaking.
Well, now you're getting into an area where I have a little bit of expertise
Please add in.
and yeah, I'd like to. So, um, writing and speech are they to you and me and to the whole world functionally. It's communication. It's the same. It should be the same. But we know from various brain lesions that, in fact, it's not the same. You can lose your ability to write without losing your ability to speak, and vice versa. And I myself used to perform a test called a WADA test. It was named after a doctor, Dr. WADA. And during this test, you're trying to figure out where the patient's memories are held and where their speech is held, on which
Hmm,
side of their brain, because maybe later we're going to do a brain surgery on them. And the way that we do this test is we would track a catheter from the leg artery all the way up to the arteries of the brain. And first, we would, on one side, you would inject a numbing medicine, a barbiturate, and you would put half of the person's brain to sleep. And then you would quiz them and you would see where their memories are. And then you would also ask them to speak or to write or whatever. And then you would do it on the other side and you would see if they had, maybe sometimes people had codominance, or sometimes they the speech on the left and the blah blah blah. But what was really interesting to me as a doctor doing those tests on people was that while sometimes if I turned off the speech area, I would turn off the speech area and they would not be able to speak. But if I handed them a cell phone, they were able to talk. If I asked them to sing a song, they would often giggle as though like, what do you mean I can't even talk? But then I would sing, if you're happy and you know it, clap your hands, and they were able to do it. And so it means that this thing that we think is all the same, writing and speaking and singing and speaking on the cell phone, it's not the same. You're using different parts of your brain for speaking on the cell phone than you are face to face. So it was very fascinating. You could see there were
interesting.
definitely people who could sing and not be able to speak, and vice versa. It
Well, we
was
have
very
left
cool.
brain and right brain. Some
Hmm.
people we say are left brain, some people are right brain. Actually, I mean, that's an interesting experiment, what you're saying, to actually put part of your brain to sleep.
Yeah, yeah.
Right.
Yeah, that's what you do. You would have the patient lie down and put
How
their
would they put
arms
their brain to
up.
sleep? What would they do? They'd use electrodes or anesthesia? What?
No, we would
How would they
track
do
a
it?
catheter all the way up into the artery that supplies the
Wow.
brain, and directly into the artery that supplies that half of the brain. We would inject a barbiturate, which is literally
Mm.
an anesthetic,
Mm-hmm.
and say that part of the brain is now numb. It's asleep. It's
Wow.
turned
Okay.
off. And you would do this, and the person arls, and boom, this would come down, come
Hmm.
smashing down.
I've done the
And
same thing, but I use a few pints of Guinness.
yeah, yeah. And we would often quiz them. We would show them a series of three or four things, like a box of macaroni and cheese. And we had some flashcards that were like made for kids. Yes, it is very Oliver Sacks-esque because it's in Oliver Sacks's book, as he talks about those types of phenomenon, and that's exactly right. And I used to do those all the time. Actually, they were
Hmm.
terrifying. Imagine getting consent for the to the patient. Like you walk up to the patient, you're like, okay, Here's the thing, guy. I'm gonna just turn off half your brain for a little while. 5 minutes are gonna, and then I'm gonna turn off the other half. No worries. Now, I will be honest and say I did not have a single complication during any one of the procedures. I must have done them 30 times, which is a lot. If you've done two, you've done a lot. And we used to have a very busy practice doing that because we had a very busy neurosurgeon. Um, but Yeah, it's exactly Oliver Sacks material. Correct. Yeah, great.
I would have another activity. I'll just throw it out there. It's something that I've done. It's interesting. If you feel like it
Yeah.
resonates with you or something you want to do. But Dr. Jeremy would know more about this really, but I'm sure most people here are familiar with automatic writing, right?
Oh, yes, I love
Right.
automatic grading.
So
Yeah,
what's
beautiful.
interesting, Lolan pointed out, and I pointed out that when we're doing this, I don't know, this Tainet Deborim or something, or a speech fast.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting project to try, and it's best if you get like unlined art paper, things without the line, not the notebook paper, but you know, the unlined art paper. And you just take, like I said, and don't say anything and go into a meditative state and just put your hand there and whatever comes, whether it's doodles, whether it's phrases of words or doodles or pictures or whatever, just let it flow onto the paper. You know, don't force it. Just hey, whenever you feel like doodling or
Well, the
writing down or
Zohar was
drawing.
said to be written entirely through automatic writing.
Right.
Did you know that the Zohars, it was supposedly written through automatic writing?
That's the Sefer Zohar. Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. So anyway, what's interesting is you do that, and then you just meditate. Then you sit. Then after you're finished, you don't use the analytical mind. You're just using intuition. Whatever
Yeah.
intuitively comes to you, you just write it, you just let it go. If it's doodling or this or that, you don't even have to look
Mm.
at the paper. Let your mind wander. And then after you're finished, go back and analyze it now with your rational, logical mind and see what you've put down on the paper. It's really interesting. It can give you some really profound insights into things that you're saying, wow, what's that doing there? I just drew a
Yeah.
picture, I don't know, maybe of a duck with a top hat on, okay? What does that mean? What does that represent? How what why did that come to mind or whatever it is? And you just sort of like sit there and analyze it and figure out what's going on. Just an interesting activity that works for some people, not for everybody. And not saying that, I'm simply saying that it is something that can give interesting insights. It's kind of like a Rorschach test, right? The ink blot test, where you're looking at the
Mm-hmm.
ink blots and finding meaning in these random patterns, pareidolia.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's
They're
just
not
one of
really
those things you
random.
can do, and then look at all these things you've doodled or drawn, and say, try to find a common theme or something like the connective tissue there. Well, what all these things, these random elements that you've put down on the paper, what they might mean or how they relate to each other. Have fun with it. Just an idea. As,
Wow.
Do-
Wait,
as
automatic
Doctor
writing
already
was part
alluded,
of.
though, the Sefer Zohar was, according to tradition, written in a trance-like state, right, Doctor?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was supposedly. Yeah. Uh and some of the so, 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 some of the writing is leads me to believe that yes, that person was in a trance
Yeah.
because it's very hard for me to understand. So,
Well, why not? I did my taxes in a trance-like state.
oh wow, oh wow. So, oh wow, we have a in the is someone in the in the chat someone who's a medium, and that was part of their job was to do automatic writing. Wow,
Hmm,
that's
that's really
interesting.
that, yeah. Remote
Yeah.
viewers, they use that's very similar to what remote viewing they would write down, right? Remote viewing?
Remote viewing, absolutely.
Right. Same basic concept, you know.
It's funny. I just posted an article on Discord about Wolf Messing, who was a famous Russian Jew who was well versed in telepia, right? Which is telepathy and uh, uh, yeah, telekinesis. I believe
I was
telepia.
telling Neris
Yeah.
Underbake, yeah, true mediums are rare. Well done.
Oh, bad. That was bad.
I'm a Lucille Ball fan. I'll admit that when that line came from Fred Mertz and I Love Lucy episode.
I love Fred Mertz. Yeah. All right. Oh, Russell. Sorry, that's a meeting. Yes. Wow. So, all right. Well, do you have any other points that you wanted to share with us?
Just basically, so yeah. Well, it concludes the whole thing with this week's Parsha. The double Parsha concludes with discussing the Brit, like the Brit. The end of it is dealing with. Oh yeah, I did also want to mention. So
I knew there was one other thing.
yeah, the method to purify. But so the thing is that they would view the house or the garment of the person
Hmm.
who was the Metzora, right? The person
Hmm.
with the leprosy that wasn't leprosy, the super,
Right.
right? They view it, and the portion of the garment or the house that was affected would be removed. So let's say it's on a table, you
Oh,
remove the
that was
table.
my
If
question.
it's on the sleeve,
Is the house remediated? Is there did the house have to be destroyed or only
oh, it has
partially?
to be destroyed, but the client would examine it. If it comes back and the client decides that the affected area has to be removed, if it recurs, then the entire garment or the house has to then be destroyed if it recurs. In other
So
words,
you
if
could
they
do a
do this and it
limited
comes back,
resection.
then you have to get rid of the whole thing.
Okay,
Yeah.
so, but on the first shot, you could do a limited resection.
Well,
And
exactly.
okay,
The person affected must, if it's a person, they have to dwell outside the camp or the city until healed. Then the client has to, of course, examine and see, all right, if
all right.
the whitish spots are gone, the whitish or pinkish spots are gone. And then if the afflicted area in a garment or home must be removed. So let's say it's the sleeve, you have to remove it. If it's a portion of the house, like a portion of the wall or something, that has to be totally removed. Um, you know, and then if it recurs, then the garment or the entire house. So like, the first time, if it's just a portion of the wall, okay, fine, I can remove the wall and build another wall. Okay, I don't have to destroy the entire house. But if it comes back, then
Hmm.
I have to destroy the entire house. So
It's fascinating.
that's that's
Huh?
that's another thing. And then the as it's outlined at the start of the portion of Metzora, that the Metzora is purified by the client, and it's a special procedure. It involves two birds, spring water in an earthen vessel, a piece of cedar wood, a scarlet thread, a red thread, and a bundle of hyssop. And when the home is afflicted, when it's the bayit, the house that's afflicted, then it's a process is lasting as long as 19 days. The claim determines if the house can be mataher, if the house can be purified, or whether it must be demolished. So the claim gets to decide whether or not, and like I said, the period 19 days, the claim gets to decide whether the house can be saved, whether it can be purified, or whether it has to be destroyed. So you definitely don't want a Cohen who's a land developer making that call. You
Yeah,
don't want that, okay?
yeah.
Just letting you know.
It's like a building inspector.
Yeah.
Well, we're very close to, I mean, we're almost at 9 o'clock. I think we can
5:55.
call it. Yeah. Well, I mean, it's a fascinating topic, and I want to thank you for sharing all of your wisdom with us,
And I
Rabbi.
want to thank Faith McCann for having us on her show. And I
Oh,
want to thank
yes.
Lolan and everyone here who gives all these tremendous, great comments. And, uh, you know,
Yeah.
Mark Gilmore, Jewish famous
Yeah.
lad. I love
Everybody in the
that.
chat is
Mark Gilmore always
fantastic.
comes up with
We
these
can't
funny.
even name everybody. There's 26 people. It's fantastic. We've got, you know, double
And we love
minion.
every single one of them.
Yep, we
Judy
sure do.
Jacobs signed in. I'm sorry I didn't see you, Judy. Reminds me of the. Okay. Anyway, Dr. Jeremy and I really appreciate everyone joining us to have
Yeah.
this time
Joining us
together.
for, yeah, Kabbalistic Parsha study. We'll see you next week. And thank you very much.
Thank
So
you,
Lila
everyone.
Tov. Lila Tov,
Lila Tov.
everyone.